Hello folks, welcome to my YouTube channel Watercolor Impressions. Today we are doing a boat scene. As you can see, the first wash is the light wash. So I'm using cobalt blue and thick at the top and less at the bottoms to create a gradient of the sky. And I'm also using raw amber at the bottom with more water in it so that it's really light. Now I'm jumping onto the water with the same way we created the sky. So cobalt blue, light at the top, and as it comes down I'm going to make the pigment thick and with less water to create a gradient. And I'm also using cobalt turquoise and neutral tint to create a impression of waves. So I'm creating a wave pattern on my reflection. Once it spreads out, it will give a really beautiful wave impressions. Now I'm jumping onto the boats. For the boats, in reality it looks white, but since the sky blue spills on the boat, so it gives an illusion that it's a light blue color. So I'm kind of adding it. I'm using cobalt blue for the two boats. The first one I use a little bit of neutral tint because I want to have a little bit of color variation on my boats. And I also add a little bit of neutral tint at the bottom so that there's a darker value at the bottom as well, so it anchors the boats on the water. So now I'm jumping onto the trees. I don't want a green tube, so I'm mixing cerulean blue with cat yellow. And when I do the trees, I make sure that I create a pattern so that it's broken up in a way that it gives the illusion of tree and creates a volume of it. And I also mix burnt amber, cat orange here and there to have a little bit of different of color variations in my trees. Now I'm going a little bit of thick pigment with less water to create a volume in my trees. As you can see, I'm using only neutral tint with a little bit of gradient in it. As it comes down, I'm gonna go a little bit darker so that it creates a volume and light from the top. I flip my canvas so that the color runs through from bottom to the top, so it gives me a variety of edges and variety of color variations. And it also creates a really beautiful visuals as well. So I'm looking at the reference, wherever the darker value, I'm putting it and make sure that the values are right. So I'm doing the same thing again, and I'm spraying some water by flipping the canvas so it gives a little bit of texture on the trees. I want to make sure the trees read good, so that's why I was spending a lot of time on the trees before jumping onto anything else. Now I'm jumping onto the boats again. So these boats have some kind of cloth wrapped around it. It's a tarp. So the second boat didn't have any kind of cloth wrapped around it, but I kind of did it so that there's a unity in painting. So the focus goes on the second and third boats. I flip the canvas to give an illusion that there's a gradient for the glass. Now I adding the docks. And I also like two people there. I'm also doing it in a simple and impressionistic way. And as soon as I add the people, you can see there's a depth of scale in my painting. There was no people in my reference, but I added people there. So it's really important to add people sometime to create scale in your painting. So it shows that how big is the boat in my painting as well. So next I'm adding a darker value for my boats as well as for the ground at the background. So I make sure the ground at the background have lesser value so that it doesn't comes forward. And I'm also adding a little bit of stripes for the boats as well. So now I'm creating a volume for my boats by adding darker values on top of it, and I'm also adding a lot of details, darker values on my boats. In order to add details for the boats, there are tons of details on the boats, but I squint my eyes to see whatever details is necessary. So now I'm jumping on to the water reflections. So for the water reflections, the tree is going to be reflecting on the water more, so I'm mixing a lot of cerulean blue, cat yellow, cobalt turquoise, and a little bit of iridium. And as you can see, when I do the water reflection, I make sure I leave a little bit of white bits here and there, so it gives the illusion of light. in the reflections. And I also left out white for the first boat because that's my focal point in the painting. And I'm going to use water now so that it runs down and it creates a reflection. You can also do reflections like this for the boat, but since the first boat is my focal point, I left a lot of white there in my reflections. So I also adding the blue cloth tarp from the boats, so it's also reflecting on the ground. I also added a darker value at the bottom of the boat, so it anchors the boats on the water. So now I'm seeing wherever I see the reflections are doing. So now I'm jumping on to the detailing part of the boats, or the detailing stage. I let the reflections dry for a bit, so I'm going and adding eyelets based on my reference, so to give the sunlight popping up on my boats. So now I'm going to do the foreground reflections. It's going to be a little bit darker compared to the background because it comes forward in the painting to create sense of depth. As you can see, I leave a lot of bits here and there to give an impressionistic style of waves. I don't copy exactly what's there on the reference because it doesn't serve the purpose. I make sure that the patterns are right so that it reads as a reflection and waves. So I'm kind of adding a little bit of variation in my reflection as well. I'm adding wherever I see darker values, I'm kind of adding that in my reflections. So the foreground is a little bit weak, so I'm going to glaze over with a thicker pigment in the reflections. You can also see I'm also adding like white bits in my reflection as well. So I think I'm almost done with the painting now. So I'm just gonna glaze over in the foreground and call this as done. So there's also other thing I noticed, that the cloth on the boats are not like reading really flat, so I want to create a 3D volume in it, so I kind of did that, as you can see there. And I'm also adding darker bits here and there to give a little bit of variety of shapes. This is the glazing over I'm talking about, to have a really lead in foreground element. And that's it, guys, and good luck.